cramps. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of I Can Do This All Day. I'm Dan, the part-time Avenger. That's Mark, the resident Jedi.
Hello there. Today, to kick off the wonderful, wonderful month of October and get a jump start on all of the Halloween-y type, scary type, monstery movies, we decided to hit up a movie that I don't think got enough pub when it came out and that I forgot about until we saw it. The newly minted Nick Cage vampire movie classic wonder, Renfield.
Which is weird because Nick Cage historically has always opted out of movies if he is not the lead. And so he actually doesn't have the lead title role in this. That belongs to Nicholas Hoult, which is interesting because he was a person that was going to be up for Superman along with 007, and he got Renfield. So that's a nice consolation prize.
I think we could both agree that Nicholas Hoult is a beast. And this is the kind of movie that Nick Cage needs to just start doing all the time.
He's such a versatile actor, a charming guy, right? Like he's got that personality where you like him regardless of whichever character that he is, with the exception of his character in Mad Max Fury Road, which that movie still I just don't get that movie to this day. I don't understand all the hype behind it, but he's been in so many different films. You said he was a beast because he literally was a beast in the X-Men First Class, along with the subsequent movies after that. He is someone that just has so much range, but he's kind of that awkward dude, right? He's not like the typical handsome leading man. And there's always some type of weird quirk that he has. I don't know if you ever watched the movie Warm Bodies, but he was the lead in that where he plays a zombie. He also has some Marvel tie-ins. But keep in mind that we also have a bunch of people with Marvel tie-ins for this movie.
Yeah, no, lots of Marvel tie-ins, and you got to love the everyman. I love the everyman in this role. Like it's not somebody that we're there for the Nicolas Cage, and that's the role where the Cageness really, is needed, and Nicolas Cage himself has many Marvel tie-ins, all of his Blazy Johnniness in all the Ghost Rider movies that were progressively more of a dumpster fire to your like BFF movie, Kick-Ass.
He was such a I won't say powerful character in those movies. He was just so Nick Cage in those movies. And so the weird thing is about Ghost Rider and the Marvel properties is that I heard that movie was actually pretty good, and then I burned it and I watched maybe half of it and I just didn't get into it. And I'm assuming that was the same thing with the second one, but Kick-Ass obviously is Big Daddy. That was very cool, where he had like the Adam West Batman type of character for himself, but also has some DC ties. I mean, he was Superman, so that's a cool thing that we got to see him in The Flash. And also, if you've seen the documentary of Superman Lives, he was Superman for a short period of time.
Just a hot second. He was battling a spider, which is what we need to see Superman do. But the first Ghost Rider was okay. The second one was ridiculous.
I couldn't tell you what that one was about. I don't know.
No, it was about me turning it off. That's what it was about. But the list of Marvel alumni goes on with Awkwafina, who I was super excited was in this movie because I enjoy her a brand of humor.
A lot of people don't like her. I don't understand the reasoning as to why. Like I saw like a bunch of message boards and critiquing of her as Katie in Shang-Chi, and even just be like, oh, that's the person from Nora from the Bronx or whatever that TV show that she was in. I never got a chance to watch that, but I like her. I like her humor. I like what she brings to the table. And I liked her character in this movie too, even though it was not that far of a stretch of her normal everyday character.
Yeah, I think a lot of the vitriol for her is because she crosses a lot of genres. and her personality is so much bigger than I think people, want or are willing to accept. And I love the way she is. I love the way that she attacks multiple different, whether it be franchises, genres, or even categories of art. She's in a lot of verticals, and that's awesome.
Do you think a big reason is because she's just not a white female? Because
I
I feel
mean,
like you have people that, no one ever really gives Rebel Wilson or Melissa McCarthy or even like Kristen Wiig shit. You know what I mean? But yet, a lot of anytime there's someone of, I would like to, I don't want to make it like a racial thing, but I feel like there's so much hate amongst people that are of color or different ethnicities that are in lead roles. For example, Last Jedi, we didn't like that movie, right? But I can't remember who was the person that got so much shit that she had to delete social media. Everyone hated her character.
everybody hated Rose in that movie.
Rose, yes.
Um,
And so they were like, Rose, sorry, we're going to have to shrink your role just a smidge. And when I say smidge, a metric fuck ton in the next movie. So I don't know. I think that's a real thing where
I
you even have
Kelly
like,
Marie Tran's role was small as it was. Like, she didn't have this crazy big role in the movie, and I don't understand the hate there either. Like, it's not something that is that makes sense to me. And I don't understand the Aquafina hate.
oh, well, not to make it a racial thing. I was just curious, like if you started to see that at all, or like if it would have been different, right? Because I truly feel like if you had like whether it's Kristen Wiig or Amy Poehler in this same role, there would be zero problems.
I liked her in the Oceans movie. I liked her in Crazy Rich Asians. I've liked her in a lot. Her early work was, like, just like a lot of people's early work, just kind of newer and more for, I feel old saying the younger generation, right? But it
It's
just
true.
wasn't in my wheelhouse, but I liked it. Like, I like her and I liked what she puts together. So yeah, I do think that there's definitely hate from a racial perspective when you put anybody in that role, but I think that representation is important.
I mean, it's based in New Orleans, so there's a hell of a mixing pot in New Orleans or melting pot in New Orleans. So it's just like,
But
yeah,
that
I'm
that's
fine
the
with it.
part where I was gonna say, like, I don't know if it adds up because it's in New Orleans, because there
Did someone need to be speaking Creole? Is that
no, I'm just
what?
saying, I don't know how many Asians there are in New Orleans.
There's it's on surprisingly quite a bit. So it's something that's like really crazy ridiculous. I have relatives that are in New Orleans, and I remember one time that I visited, I was just like, huh, there's a lot of people that look like me that are here. So it's a
Well, you know
pleasant
what?
surprise.
The fact that you went, huh, makes the fact that I went, huh, kind of okay. Okay by association. Um,
Yeah, well,
but I
I
mean, if we
was
want to talk about
raised so
representation, the rest of the cast, like, there's the police chief was African American, and yeah, there's not a ton of representation in this cast.
we're just like on this strong spot where it's like, yeah, there's some good representation. Like,
No, there
yeah,
isn't.
not
There
a
isn't.
lot, not a
It's
lot. There's
Aquafina and and
well, you got Shora Agdashlu, who was also have some Marvel ties. So for those who don't recognize her, she was Dr. Rao in X-Men 3: The Last Stand. She was the evil doctor. She's been in a lot of stuff. She has been in a lot of stuff. It's almost like anytime they need like an exotic older woman, she's cast.
an
And so
Eastern
I
European woman.
always, yeah, I always like view her as like, yeah, she's from that awful X-Men movie, which I still actually liked, but still.
And this movie does have comic book ties for all out there that are like, you guys are supposed to be reviewing comic book movies. I don't think that anything Robert Kirkman does can't be considered to be at least loosely adjacent to a comic book type enterprise.
Robert Kirkman from The Walking Dead, along with Invincible, for any of those who have checked that out on Amazon Prime. He he is such a creative force that he's one of those guys I think can do no wrong. He can literally touch any property and he can put his own spin on it. And I like the way he takes the direction of his properties. I think it's just flat out good, and I'm all for it. So when I didn't even realize that he was affiliated with this until I saw credits.
Yeah, same. And when I was trying to figure out how this got made and put into theaters right now, when everything's just a giant property, and we haven't seen a movie like this probably since like Warm Bodies, funny romp through horror, as opposed to suspenseful, scary, we need to shock and awe people. This is just kind of this is a very 90s comedy horror movie. And I don't think we've seen a lot of that, but knowing that Kirkman was attached is probably how it got made. And Kirkman probably was able to talk Nicolas Cage into not taking first billing and like, hey, it's going to be good. And at least there's a Nicholas with first billing.
Yeah, Kirkman, I believe he owns the studio that made this. Am I correct in that, or something? He's become like a very smart-minded man to where he's like, all right, I'm gonna start my own production company or some company and go on with some of this stuff. So I might be talking on my ass, but
you know what? I don't know. I just know that I like him, not because of the properties that he's put together, but anytime I hear him on a podcast or see him in an interview or anything,
hilarious,
super nerdy, hilarious, and like half introverted. Like I feel like you could sit quietly in a room and say a few words and enjoy company and not be like overly intimidated by this crazy amount of Hollywood power. Right.
Yeah.
I feel like he's one of us.
Yeah. Friend of the podcast, Robert Kirkman.
Whenever you're ready, Robert, you can come on.
So about this movie, when did you see this movie? And obviously it was on Peacock.
It was, and they're going to sponsor us if you keep pronouncing it like that.
I'm pronouncing it the right way.
I watched it on Peacock yesterday, last night in my basement, because I remember hearing about this movie possibly coming out, and then I didn't know it came out because it made no sense when it came out, because it came out in April. Who puts a vampire movie out in April?
I think it makes sense because they don't really have too many other properties to stretch out the entire year, right? So that was one of the things where they came out with Fast X over the summer, and this was just prior to that. So I think they needed a theater hit. And so this was the best bankable thing. I mean, Nick Cage is coming hot off the presses from Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Nicholas Hoult was coming off of his rumored attachment to Superman and James Bond. So I think it was the smart move. And they knew that if they came out with a vampire movie in October, or leading up to the whole horror, scary season, it would have just gotten decimated. This movie got decimated already. So it wasn't, it's deemed a box office flop.
Well, they put it out the week after the Mario movie. Of course it got decimated.
Yeah, but they just don't have any strong properties. Think of any other movies that they would be able to put out throughout the year. I don't even think
Universal.
I can't even.
I can't think of Oppenheimer.
So they have that, right? But that was done after the fact.
So it very well could be because they're releasing that new Exorcist movie. Like that's a Universal property, I believe.
They're gonna. I mean, they would have. It would have just cannibalized what they're already putting out. And there's going to be a bunch of stuff coming out. So the new Saw movie is going to be coming out. I want to say that there's another Disney thing coming out, like kid horror-esque themed or whatever. I could be wrong on that too, but yeah, I mean, movies are not like what they used to be, where every month or even like sometimes every week there's a bankable movie that you can go see in the theaters. That's not the case anymore. Like you almost have to kind of pick and choose. I believe you just recently stopped your movie subscription
Oh yeah,
for AMC, right?
yeah. Because there's nothing that I'm like. There's nothing I'm super stoked about seeing. Like
Yeah.
I was going to like 2 or 3 movies a week, enjoying, just seeing things in a theater. And there's nothing with the writer's strike and them stretching everything and pushing everything back. Like if I need to go to see it in the theater, I'll go on a Tuesday.
The
I
writer's
think
strike is just mind-boggling to me because like everyone just nothing is making any money. So it's like, all right, everything is stopped. No talking about stuff. But there's obviously certain things that are going to be coming out that are going to be pretty sweet. But I'm wondering, like, obviously,
like what? Aquaman, the director is making fun of it.
is he really? I saw the
Oh,
headline.
dude.
I didn't know if it was like a true
I just
like
saw the headline too, but the fact that
I
they'd even put that in a headline
I
is
think that's just like some clickbait stuff, like
whatever.
that's
He
I
was
don't
in the
know.
yellow suit or the orange suit. Like,
Yeah.
why?
I don't know,
Ugh.
man. There with all the movies that have come out and all the movies that are supposed to be coming out, I bet there's a lot of them that we are totally going to miss out on because of the writer's strike.
The nice thing is they'll end up like this one, surprising us on streaming, and we'll be able to
Yeah.
watch them.
Yeah, and hopefully it's on a streaming network that's just nice and free or something that we already subscribe to. So, well, this movie is obviously a Dracula vampire movie, but it's not the typical Dracula movie because Renfield is taking center stage. He's the one who it's focusing around, and Dracula is just kind of the cause antagonist, if you will.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's more just the focus, like everything circles around Dracula. Have you seen a lot of vampire and Dracula movies as a whole?
I'm going to say no because I'm not a big horror movie guy. I think you know this about me. I'm not that person that's like, let's get a scary movie going. I'm just not that dude. So I'm not super big into it. I'm aware and have seen like the classics, the black and whites, the old Universal ones, because I think that the practical effects are hilarious in a lot of these movies, and I'm big on the effects. I think that's one of the things I'm excited about checking out one of the movies that we've been talking about, maybe releasing later this month in the thing. But yeah, I'm not a gigantic Dracula movie person.
What was the
What about
last
you?
I've
You know
seen
what
my
the hand.
handful. No,
You
no,
know
no.
what
Hold
the
on. Wait, wait,
last
wait.
vampire movie I watched
What
was.
was the last vampire movie that you
You
watched?
watched the last vampire movie I watched with me, you son of a bitch.
Wait, which movie was that?
You know what it was. I'm not even gonna say it. I'm not even gonna say it. I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction, dickhead.
everyone, everyone who has seen the watch along, and we all know that it's Twilight is the last vampire movie that you watched, and I use that term loosely because is Twilight a vampire movie? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure.
Do vampires smell like lavender or cinnamon or whatever the hell it is?
It's a comedy. It's one of the best comedies that I've seen in a long time.
Oh,
But
I don't know. I think this is one of the best comedies I've seen in a long time.
uh
We'll get there.
so the director, Chris McKay. Have you ever heard of this guy before?
I thought he was Adam McKay for a hot second, and then I clicked on his IMDb. I'm like, I know that I like this guy for a reason, and then I figured out why I like him because he directed the Lego Batman movie, which is an amazing piece of cinematography that I saw on my birthday in the theater.
Cinematography. The Lego Batman movie
Dude,
cinematography.
don't hate on the Lego Batman movie. The Lego Batman movie might be perfect.
I watched it. It's fun. I have a hard time saying any animated movie can be perfect.
You know what, Dan? You need to stop and look at the man in the mirror and be open to change your ways, because the Lego Batman movie is amazing.
I mean, it was good. It was entertaining. I just, yeah, I won't debate this
You
now,
shouldn't. You
but
shouldn't, because all of our listeners are going to send you hateful vitriol about your despisement of the Lego Batman movie, and you can't just admit that it's a top 3 Batman movie.
I can totally say
No,
that's not the case.
no, you can't. It is a top 3 Batman movie.
It's a maybe top 10 animated movie. I
Oh,
don't
it's
know
a
about
top 3
top three
Batman movie.
Batman movie.
It's the top 3
Ah,
Batman movie.
I don't know. Agree to disagree.
Uh, I'm really interested to see how you could possibly not say it's a top 3 Batman movie. I'm
Maybe we'll
disappointed.
discuss that.
Yeah,
Discuss that
I
at a later time.
yeah.
But this director, Chris McKay, from Winter Park, Florida. I reside in Florida, but it's funny. There's a Florida and Illinois connection because he actually went to school at Columbia College in Chicago. So born in Florida and then went to school in Chicago, which is kind of sweet. And I'm the exact opposite. I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area, and now I reside in Florida. So um, ironic, right? It's kind of just coincidental that we have that type of person.
You
And
guys should hang out.
Chris McKay, friend of the podcast. You know, it's just
Man,
anytime you want to come on,
friends.
him and Kirkman. Anytime you guys want to come on, just swing on by.
Anytime you want to kill Dan in a vampire movie, you can just completely remove his head with a pen. This is a movie not at all about vampires, but about overcoming manipulative relationships and overcoming narcissists.
So it's interesting that it's the relationship of Renfield and Dracula, and I want to kind of go into that a little bit more because from what I've gathered from all of the Dracula movies, Saturday Night Live skits, cartoons that had like a Dracula Renfield dynamic,
Yeah.
all of it always kind of circulated around the ambiguous sexual preference of Renfield and Dracula and the relationship. It didn't really go there at all in this movie. Does that surprise you at all, or is that something that
did it go there at all?
No, it didn't.
Did it?
I don't think so.
Did it?
No, that's what I'm saying. It didn't.
I mean, Renfield did have a very colorful apartment and was very trendy in his new clothing.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like the Ace and Gary type of dynamic of the ambiguously gay duo, where it's like, Renfield's in like this compromised position and Dracula's like licking his fingertips. You know what I mean? Like I at no point did I see anything overtly sexual between Renfield and Dracula.
No, there wasn't much that was overtly sexual in this movie. They got their R rating from what's the word?
Gratuitous violence.
Gore.
Yeah, excessive it was for sure.
Tarantino level of gushing CGI blood.
But I feel like it's just a lost opportunity and almost kind of like a surprise to me that they did not go down that route of the sexuality of Renfield and Dracula, because we're in a time right now where that's almost like the thing to do, right? Like you explore every character's sexuality, even if there was nothing in that in the past. And so this one did have somewhat of a ambiguous past of like they never specifically state that Renfield and Dracula have this relationship, but it was a lot of implication. And to me, it was just like, well, why didn't they talk about that or display that in this movie?
Because that's not Kirkman's move. That's not what he writes. He writes strong characters that abuse the weaker character and the weaker character overcoming, like Invincible, right? He writes this overbearing, power hungry dad that ends up trying to take over the planet, and the young upstart that he was looking down on and picking on has to rise up above and get his ass kicked. I mean, isn't that The Walking Dead too? In a lot of cases, like Negan is that character in The Walking Dead. And yeah, I just think that's Kirkman explores relationships and dynamics. I don't think that the slapstick loosey goosey nature of the pinkies up Renfield was something that he, like, it didn't fit. It wouldn't have fit with the casting either. Like Cage could have done it as a goof, but I don't know that you're getting him for that in this climate. And and you're not getting Nicholas Hoult to do it. Nicholas Holt's not the right character if that's the case. If that's what you're going for, the casting's all wrong. Everything.
I suppose. I don't know. I just felt like that was like of all movies, and I'm not saying to do a movie just to be able to include different sexuality, right? Very much like diversity. Do it if it fits, right? I think for the characters, it would have fit and it would have been the perfect time to do so because here's this horror comedy spoof where you could totally have gotten away with some stuff, even if it was like, oh yeah, you know what? Like, I don't understand why, people always think that like Dracula's manservant's gay. It just doesn't make sense. They could have poked fun at it, if anything, but they didn't. So I just felt like I'm wondering if that was like a strategic thing. Like, Kirkman was just like, hey, let's not go into that just to avoid all the BS. Or was it just like, not interested. I'm just going to do something else.
I mean, the whole movie circulated around narcissistic behavior. I mean, that you would have had to completely rewrite the whole movie.
Well, this is supposed to be the potential to expand on the monster universe of Universal. So very much like Godzilla, King Kong. I guess this is supposed to be some part of that. And that's why I'm just like,
It's not part of a bigger monsters universe, right?
It's supposed to be. They're leaving it open for that to be a potential.
I think if they try and do a scary Dracula, they're not bringing Nicolas Cage back.
Right. But like that was their idea to do this, because originally this was supposed to be done right around that time with the Mummy. Tom Cruise's The Mummy, I think, and that was just
Tom
got
Cruise
left
told
in
us to
production
forget
hell.
about that movie.
Never forget, Tom.
The Mummy.
Which, by the way, I just recently saw the first two Mummies with Brendan Fraser.
Recently,
like last week. Yeah, I've never watched them.
Those movies are amazing. You got the third one to watch, baby, and it's just as good.
Yeah.
And then you got to watch The Scorpion King.
I might watch The Scorpion King. I don't know. But yeah, there's just never, like, those types of movies were never my go-to. Like the action adventure movie was like, yeah, it's got two things against it, right? I hate
action and adventure.
I hate time period movies, right? And I don't like. It's not that I don't like them. It's not my first go-tos, like adventure movies. I'll enjoy them. Like Goonies, great adventure movie, fantastic. But like if someone says like, "Oh, hey, like yeah, we're gonna go see this movie. It's an adventure movie," I'm like, okay, I'll pass.
This is why you didn't want to talk about Indiana Jones.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Indiana Jones to me is not my cup of tea. I loved and have watched a million times Temple of Doom. I don't really like the other ones all that much, and I have not seen the last two recent Indiana Jones movies because it's just not my bag, baby. Not my bag.
You are in the horror movie group though. So
love horror movies.
But do you love the comedic horror movies like this? Were you excited about the fact that you knew just based on the cast? And we haven't talked about one of the cast members I was most excited to see in this movie, and Ben Schwartz. Were you excited by the cast to say, oh, great, a Dracula movie with all of these hilarious people?
Ben Schwartz, I'm not familiar with. What else has he been in?
Parks and Rec.
I never watched Parks and Rec, so like I've only seen a
Oh,
few episodes on the plane, but that's pretty much it.
boo,
And then
boo.
the countless Chris Pratt blooper reels with everyone loves a comeback story. It's one of my, probably the
Oh my
all-time great
God.
blooper reel of that. That's so awesome. But yeah, sorry, don't know Ben Schwartz. Haven't really
He was
watched a
in
whole
the
lot of Parks
other
and Rec.
guys. He was in one of the newer Transformer movies.
Yeah, well, I definitely didn't see that then.
Oh my God. He was
The
in
other guy
Sonic.
is hilarious.
He voiced Sonic the Hedgehog.
Ooh, really? Huh,
Yeah. I'm
I
so
don't know.
disappointed in you.
Yeah, it's
And the
a
best
lot of media
the
out there.
the best outtakes from from Parks and Rec, and the most quotable part is a Ben Schwartz quote. Don't be suspicious. Don't be
Oh, is
suspicious.
that him? That's a
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That is funny.
Oh, he's so good in that. You need to watch that show.
I'm
I
not
got you to
opposed
watch
to
Ted
it.
Lasso. I will get you to watch Parks and Rec.
That's a lot of seasons, though. That's a lot
It's
of
so
seasons.
good. When you fly, dude, you can just chew them up when you travel. I'm
Speaking of
telling you.
flying, I will say, and I'll take a slight departure on this, but because we haven't talked about a whole lot of DC overall, um, although we have had a lot of episodes focused around DC, but recently, besides The Flash, if you're saying to go watch Parks and Rec, I highly urge you to go watch Superman and Lois on HBO Max. There's
Yeah.
three seasons, and it is, I'm not a big Superman fan, but I am super impressed with Tyler Hoechlin's portrayal of Superman, and also just the way that they kind of explored the different side to Superman and Lois Lane of how their family life is, just as being parents in a small town.
There's
Crazy,
three
crazy
seasons
good.
of that.
It's good. It's a quick watch. I'm already on the third season right now,
I
and I
didn't
just
know.
started watching.
I thought it was new.
I
Like
mean,
we
it
had talked
is.
about
Yeah.
this. I don't know if it was on a previous episode or before a previous episode. Like I saw a little clippy of it, and was impressed with the acting, and I was like, "Oh, have you seen this?" And yeah, I did not know that it was in season 3. Shows you how much I pay attention to Superman things that don't
It makes
include
you,
Henry
yeah, it
Cavill.
makes you like Superman and his world. And they take it into a few
Krypton?
different. There's plenty of Krypton in it, or at least
Really?
Krypton nuances and Kryptonian characters for sure.
Oh, now
So
now you're just piquing my interest with all of the Kryptonianness.
you want me to watch Parks and Rec, which is probably like what, 8 seasons?
Uh,
Um,
8 gold seasons.
is it 8? Really? I just totally
I have
guessed.
no
I wish
idea.
was.
I don't know off the top of my head. Were you familiar with the Renfield relationship with Dracula and the Dracula blood situation? Like, did you know that Renfield had powers? Because
No,
that was one of the things in this movie that I was like, that seems different.
I just remember him being like literally like a weak manservant that just caters to
He was the gimp.
every little whim, right? Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what it was. Have you ever seen uh rewinding back to the 90s, Dracula Dead and Loving It with Leslie Nielsen?
Oh, if I have, it's been it's been a minute.
So good. I mean everything with Leslie Nielsen is gold, right? I think
I
it's
believe I've seen that movie on VHS from this establishment.
yeah, it's a good one. It is certainly good. But yeah, that is the extent of my Renfield's knowledge, I guess. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't even say it's knowledge because it took me a while to even really figure out like, oh yeah, I think he turned himself into a bat, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, no, I was really surprised by this. I thought it was a very cool spin on how can you make this movie more exciting, right? Because you have the spectacle that is Nick Cage, and that's what he is, right? No doubt about it. And that's not even a slight against him. It's just that man is a spectacle. You go see a movie with Nicolas Cage because you expect him to fucking freak out. And that's what you love about the movie, and his just random quirkiness. That's what a Nick Cage movie is. So how can you make this more fun if he's not the main character? Well, you put in some ridiculous practical, I don't know if they're practical, but a lot of digital blood and
So much
crazy,
blood.
yeah, crazy fatalities and a lot of appendages flying back and forth.
I was expecting more Cage up front, but I think we got just this perfect sample of his, you know, flying around and fighting people off. But the one thing we didn't get in this movie, and the reason why I said it's the least Dracula-esque movie, is they didn't do any backstory, any talk about the transference of powers. They did no, like, other than I eat bugs to get power. Like, they explained the bare minimum when it came to the Dracula legend and legacy kind of thing. I mean,
They
it was,
they had like almost like the Incredible Hulk type of intro where he goes through his little story. So I think that's
but it but
that's
it was
a
very, it was more of how Renfield got hooked in, not, well, Dracula and this. They didn't go through the whole blah thing, right? Like,
sure.
you were meant to just be like, yo, it's Dracula. If you don't Google it. And I loved that,
Yeah.
because, like, as we're annoyed by it in every Batman movie, right? You don't need to see his parents get killed every time. We're coming to this movie knowing that who Dracula is. So we didn't need the exposition, and not having the exposition left them some ambiguity to add a few things that aren't in what our normal canon is, and that I think enhanced the movie. I think him being like a super ninja in this, like, he's the fucking John Wick of old ass dudes that don't age. And we don't know how long he can age, or if he dies when Dracula dies, he doesn't age. Like, we know nothing about it. And I don't think that affects the movie at all. I just really enjoyed it. And, like, he gets the dark side Anakin eyes and he just goes crazy.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what it is. Or I'm surprised you didn't talk about your favorite vampire movie where you get those Edward Cullen eyes where you just they go amber and then he just like fucking goes into shit.
No,
But
no, it's more like Dust Till Dawn. There's just this switch that goes off and shit goes down. Everybody dies.
by having Nicolas Cage in more of the movie, you really want to flirt with that line of like, okay, is this going to be a good movie with some campy performance in it? Or is this going to be a campy movie with, you know, campy performances in it? Like I think that's where it is. You can't overdose on Nick Cage too much in this, especially with that type of character, because no one wants to hear Dracula talk. They don't. They
I
just
think
want him to like suck some blood and limbs fly somewhere.
I think the way that they present Dracula in this movie is the great balance, right? Because it was just Nicolas Cage doing the blah the whole time, right? In the same makeup, doing the thing. But the fact that he, like, overstays his welcome, and then people try to kill him, and then he is almost dead, and then he's gonna nurse him back to health, and it's just this cycle. And then we get to see charred Dracula and half their emperor in the Skywalker movie, one where he's like barely hanging on, and then he evolves, and I just loved that. I was like, that is a really interesting way to present this character, where we're not looking at the same thing, and it doesn't get too campy. While it's still funny, it saves it from what you're talking about, is just driving to the bottom of the lake and becoming almost too much Cage. We're not drowning in Cage here. And that, I agree, would have made this movie way worse than it is. I think that he's there in a subtle way that makes it just really work.
And Nicholas Hoult does a fantastic job of being so relatable and you feel for the character, right? Even though he does these awful things and he's a badass and he eats bugs, which is freaking gross, but his performance and how he emotes makes you feel for Renfield, the slave of Dracula. And so it's a very hard thing to do because really this is a movie at face value. We should not like these characters. These people have killed multiple hundreds, if not thousands of people. And yet you still like Dracula and you still like Renfield because of Nicolas Cage's gravitas and Nicholas Holt's just fantastic acting, in my opinion.
I mean, Nicholas Hoult in this movie is trying to he's doing it the best way he can. He's got to murder. So let's murder shitty people. And like, that's where you draw that line. Well, is that justifiable? I kind of like that he's doing it. He's the Robin Hood of serial killers.
Or the Dexter, if you will.
That's another one I haven't seen.
Never? Really?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. Yeah.
First 2 seasons, pretty solid. Actually, first 3, very solid.
Yeah, and then it jumps the shark from what I hear and goes on for another 5 after that. So
if you like the characters, you'll go along for the ride anyways. It's all good.
Hey, so, take what you just said, apply it to Parks and Rec.
There's so many TV series that I would even want to revisit because it's been so long. And one of those actors is in one of those TV series for Superman and Lois. Is it Dylan Walsh? Are you familiar with the actor Dylan Walsh?
No, it makes me think of 90210, and I know that's not right.
Yeah, it totally does, right? But he is Lois Lane's dad in Superman and Lois, and okay. I recognized him from Nip Tuck, which was on FX back in the day. Such a good show. And that guy hasn't aged a bit. I mean, he still looks the same to me. But yeah, that's one of those things where I'd like to see those familiar actors, especially those that have been on TV shows that I really enjoy. I want to see them in multiple things.
Are you saying that there's a lot of Nip Tuck going on with him?
I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if you have the means to do so, why not? Everyone wants to stay young forever, right?
So you bring up all these characters, and I think there's a lot of warmness to the things that we get to see in this. I think that a lot of the people from the folks in the support group and their back and forth, keeps us going. That gave me such Fight Club vibes. I don't know about you, like for just sure. So much, and I love that movie. That movie is like fucking Shawshank for me. If it's really on at any point, I will watch the entire thing. Love it. It is a crazy movie, and I think it's amazing. But I also think this movie is pretty dang good. And the balance that you were talking about between horror and comedy is so tight. It's way better than I ever expected it to be when I was like, let's watch a Nick Cage vampire movie. What category would you put this movie in? If you were at the video store, ready to put it on the shelf, does it go in comedy or does it go in horror?
I mean, I guess you have to put it in horror just because it's Dracula, right?
Do you?
I think that's the only thing that you can do is that it falls into that category. And it falls, I believe they label this movie as horror comedy, right? Which I don't necessarily agree with a lot of categorization of horror because what always kind of threw me for a loop when I was younger was The Crow, the movie The Crow. When you would read that, it would have horror thriller, which I was like, what? That's not a horror movie, is it? It's like, it's a comic book movie, but at the same time, yes, there's a lot of dreariness to it, but I wouldn't say that it was a horror. I mean, would you say that movie's a horror? Because
no, it's more of like a suspense movie. I think. I don't think there's.
I don't even know if it's a suspense is the right.
The reason I asked you that question there's a reason I asked you that question before you go into the crowing. Um, a movie you brought up earlier, Dracula Dead and Loving It, was 100% in the comedy section at the old Hollywood Video Store.
The horror designation is because there's so much killing and murder in this that you can't help but put that in horror. Like there is now, granted, you put Kill Bill next to this, equal parts dismemberment, right, and blood and gore, but that's not categorized as horror. So I don't know, maybe the way my logic is that because Dracula, lots of killing, falls under horror. I get it, it's funny, but I don't know, maybe some people won't necessarily feel like that is just all that it is, which is a comedy.
Okay. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. Um, you have a reputation for letting the boys kind of sit in on many movies that some people might not think the youths are good for. And we've talked about all the movies you were exposed to as a youth. Did you let your kids watch this?
Yeah, of
Yes!
course.
I
Of
love it.
course I did. I mean, if it's on TV, you can let them watch it, right? Right? I mean, it's there. It's there available to be watched. So I
Oh,
don't see the problem with it. So I will say that we are in full horror mode now. So there's some Halloween decorations that have gone up, and we have started to get into the routine of watching scary movies, or at least, in quotes, horror movies during dinner or movie nights on the weekends.
what's the
And
ages again? We got to refresh for the audience because I feel like there's going to be
a totally not mature for their age 9 and 5 year olds.
yes.
So 9 and 5. So we watched just recently. We watched Friday the 13th, the original Friday the 13th.
Ooh.
We watched Nightmare on Elm Street and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. And yeah. So that's kind of the start of the scary,
Nightmare
spooky
season?
season
Is
for
that
us.
nightmare
Yeah,
season for your kids?
not for these kids.
They just sleep soundly after Leatherface?
Seems like it. Yeah,
That's
seems like
amazing.
it. I
Oh,
will say, like, watching those movies now, which were designated as horror movies, they are almost as much of a comedy as Renfield is. It's they're pretty bad. If you've got, well, you haven't watched them, right? Is that correct? You haven't watched them at all?
I've watched some of them, a couple of
Okay.
them, yeah. But yeah, they get laughable because I think that when they came out, they were the trope. The tropes weren't, as just, large and in bold letters as they are now, Now they're
No.
formulaic and you know what's going to happen before it happens. You're just like, oh, where's Jason? Oh, there's Jason. Oh, Freddy. He's real. He's going to get you. Oh, there's a bathtub. He's going to come out of gotcha. Oh, is he sleeping? Is he not sleeping? I think that those begat the really intense, freaky movies that we have now. I'm not like scared of the slasher movies per se, because you know that there's going to be something. The movies that the reason I don't watch horror movies, especially more recently, is because the stuff that they're putting out is more disturbingly horror than slasher, right? Like I could do a Michael Myers movie, whatever, right? Do I get a little jumpy? Of course I do. But that's like the joy that people find from these movies. But like the Exorcist, the original one, disturbs me in a way that makes me uncomfortable. The
Mm.
fucking trailers for the new one, I had to sit through the full length trailer in the theater before Oppenheimer. And I'm like in IMAX being like, I don't want to think about this. No, fuck you. And then a lot of these like Supernatural or The Nun and just all this stuff where you bring in like multiple areas of sacrilege. It's just like, you gotta go that big, huh? They do, and they do very well. But the paranormal stuff and the anti-religious or the religion, just the stuff where it's like, like I get, yeah, a guy could go crazy and put on a mask and start murdering people. That could happen too, but less plausible than fucking weird supernatural bump in the night kind of stuff.
Interesting you say that though, because some people would debate the fact that that might be more plausible. That supernatural aspect, um, unable to describe what really happened, is more likely than someone putting on a
Oh, I'm
mask
sure.
and going around
Yeah,
killing
no,
people.
not debating that it's not more likely. It's less likely to give me fucking the inability to sleep and to freak me out for days.
Fair
Right?
enough.
Like that's not what I'm looking for from my cinema. I'm not looking for, lack of sleep and mental terrorism. Like not what I'm here for, baby.
So just because we're on the topic of scares and all that stuff, so some people find violence and gore just appalling. So where's your stance on gore and violence specifically about this movie, and how do you think it fits, or do you think that there is a argument that could be that, like, oh, this belongs in all of cinema, and then do you see a counter argument where it's like, no, there should never be anything this gratuitous in
So
movies?
this movie is Kill Bill level hilarious, right? Part of Kill Bill, like the beginning of the first one, where she had to crush the dude's head in the door, and there's like, like rape and things like that. That's disturbing, but like samurai sword Kill Bill level blood gushing violence, I for some reason find funny, which is probably a bad thing. I mean, I grew up on Mortal Kombat where they're pulling fucking spines out of backs and shit. Like I'm with it. Like fatality him up, baby. Let's go.
Have you seen the recent Mortal Kombats now? Like, so back in the day, people threw up, or everyone was like up in arms. Parents, I was like, nope, you cannot play Mortal Kombat. And Super Nintendo had you had
Gray
to
blood.
unlock. Yeah, you could. There was no blood in
It
Super
was like they're
Nintendo.
sweating. No, they're just sweating. They're
Yeah,
sweating from everywhere.
and the fatalities, as awful as they were back then, are nothing compared to what just happens in the regular gameplay now. Have you seen or
No.
played the
So
recent ones?
so I used to get my ass kicked at Mortal Kombat. I was terrible at it. I'm not a big fighting game person. After Street Fighter 2, it was all over for me. Because I'm not like a button combination joystick person, and it never translated over to the sticks for me. So I'm more of an action adventure RPG gamer. Um, but I'm gonna Google it now just to watch them, because
Oh my
even
god.
in the old game, they were fucking awesome. And when you were at the arcade and somebody knew what they were doing, like you just stand there and watch. Like, show me a new one. Fucking Dragon, Liu Kang, all the weird ones. Yeah, no, I'm a big. I thought the fatalities were hilarious in Mortal Kombat.
The fatalities now are just ridiculous. And there's, like I was saying, in the regular gameplay, you can do like a power move that is like 15 fatalities put together. And that's just the regular gameplay that's happening. So
Fighting games are getting so insane. That's a whole different topic that I'm happy to get into. But video games and fighting games now, they're just crazy. They're
that
my generation cannot keep up. No.
I've been playing a lot of Mortal Kombat with my oldest, and we just
Which Mortal
recently got
Kombat?
10, I think.
Oh, the new one. Did you get one yet?
Well, no, not one is the newest, and
Yeah.
11, like we didn't get 11, we had 10.
Okay.
So, and for me, it was just like, holy crap, this is badass. And it's so crazy. Like, so the reason my original question is like, what do you feel about like the violence and gore? And it seems like you're okay with it, right? Are
Yeah.
you ever going to be like, oh, this is just too much for kids? Us being parents, do you feel like people are smart enough to know what's real, what's fake, and what's smart to
Kids
do, what's
aren't.
smart not to do?
Kids are dumb in some cases. And it really depends on what kid you have, right? Like if you have a kid that can, will process that as this is fake and that's okay. I'm not sure where my kid is yet. He's 2.5. Like, he watches Paw Patrol a lot. He really liked the Mario movie. But like he has not, like, I've had to watch podcast movies for the podcast after he goes to bed just because I'm like, I don't think I want to deal with this yet. And my wife agreed. She's like, yo, that's an after bedtime. I don't want to deal with that yet. I don't want to have that he's up all night and freaking out conversation with him.
Are they
Let's
all
let him.
movies that I suggested, or
Yes, always. But I mean, I suggested this movie, so no, they're not. But I don't know when I'm there yet. I don't. I mean, I remember watching, stuff when it came out on cable, and you figure it out.
Is this
But
excessive though? Is this violence in this movie just too much that you're like, ooh, yeah, I can see why people would want to not watch this? Or is it okay? Is it all just like, hey, it's a movie, it's entertaining, and they wanted to entertain you with the effects?
do I think that this is the entry level first one to show your kid? No,
No,
no.
what
This
about
is.
just in general? What about just as for adults?
I don't give a fuck about adults. They need to figure their shit out. Like, watch the movie. If you don't like it, don't watch it.
Quit being a
It's
bitch.
labeled. It's labeled gory. Like, figure your shit out. Like, but I don't think that this is like a should this be made? Yeah, make the movie. I find it entertaining. It puts into context the immense power that bugs give this guy. He's the Peter Parker of chewing on spiders. But with great power came great killing power, apparently.
Great extermination.
Yes. Oh, you're good at this. But yeah, no, I don't care about that.
So the story of this movie, did you find it plausible? Were at any points where you just like, yeah, I guess they just needed to make a story, and that's why there's the whole subplot of Aquafina's character and a little bit of the character development there, where I believe it's her dad died, who
Yeah,
was a
so
cop. Is that
so the police department thing was laughable, and I think that in this current climate of just the discussions about law enforcement, it made sense to make that just ridiculous. I don't think it hurts the movie that everybody's corrupt. Ha ha ha. Everybody but Aquafina, and Ben Schwartz just gets to walk out and F everybody up and just walk away. Like, I think that could detract or possibly create unnecessary friction or dissonance in the film. So yeah, no, she's the only honest cop. I for a minute thought that Renfield was going to be like, oh, she's the only honest one. That's the one I need to feed to Dracula, not the bus for the cheerleaders.
yeah?
I thought that was going to be more of a thing of Dracula needs to eat her to become whole and run for re-election and everybody wears red hats. I don't know. That was my thought, but they didn't go that way. But that was the only part of it where I'm like, yeah, you could do this more. But as I watched the movie, I was like, I understand why you're not. It's okay.
So you're okay with the attempt at a story and just leaving it where it's at?
It's very comic book. And that's
Okay.
what I love about it, right? It's very comic book. And then seeing who wrote it, I 100% support it. And it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary diatribe, right? If you put that in, this movie becomes very chunky, right? I mean, if you put in the Dracula origin and the explanation of powers and what happened to Renfield's family and all that, right? Like there's so many potholes you could step in with this. Renfield could be looking in on his great 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 granddaughter. He could be on Ancestry. Who the fuck knows? But he's not. And that's, that is what it is. You use the longing and the forlorn, but you don't it doesn't have to be all about that. And I think too many movies get lost in making every little point about everything. So
Yeah, this isn't it's not a Chris Nolan movie, right? Like you don't
no,
need to
it's
do
not.
that.
It doesn't need to be fucking 3 hours of Dracula getting put into cement and ice cube trays. Like it doesn't need to be that. It doesn't need to be that Dracula's own assistant does not understand how to kill a vampire. It's funny that it's very Shaun of the Dead at the end. Like, oh, we put him in, we threw him in the garbage and we'll see.
Yeah. There's no way to stop Dracula. He's always going to be around.
But it also seems there's no way to repossess Renfield's power. So
yeah,
Dracula's fucked anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's going to happen?
Well, I will tell you what is going to happen on this episode because I've got a question for you, Mark.
Oh,
Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult in the movie Renfield. Can you do this all day?
So I knew you were going to ask me that question. And I knew halfway through the movie what my answer was going to be. Fuck yes. This movie is great. This is in the Halloween rotation for a long time. It's awesome. And maybe the first time after I'm sure my son will handle horror movies and not be too scared and not go crazy, once he's in, once he's as tough as your kids, apparently as completely and totally desensitized as your 9 and 5-year-old. Like, let's go. I'll watch this with him. I think it's hilarious.
So my 9 and 5-year-old actually play the Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game and the Friday the 13th video game.
Yes.
And we attended Tampa Bay Comic-Con and we attended a panel about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. Very, very cool panel. And actually we won a nugget for, I don't know if you know who Nugget is. Nugget's the chicken at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre farm or wherever it is. And so we won one of those and it's limited edition. And we got it from the guys who made the video game. So it's really cool. So my son plays that and he always asks me like, hey, do you want to take turns playing this? I was like, nah, I'm okay. But you have to go around and you have to kill. You can either be the killers or you could be the victims. And he always picks the killers. So I don't know. Maybe it's going down the wrong side of the road.
And they say video games ruin kids.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's perfectly fine with it, and he finds what would be scary movies to other people. He finds them kind of funny. He's not scared about stuff, and he still has his childhood innocence. Or both of them still have their childhood innocence. My youngest is still afraid of the dark. My oldest still gets he still has a few jump scares, but it's all good. They'll be fine. I don't think you're going to see them in news headlines anytime soon.
That's good. That's good because that would be disturbing, but it also could really help the podcast. So just throwing it out there. As is the proper way to end our podcast, I have to ask you the exact same question and maybe extend it to the boys to see what their thoughts were if you received it from them. But how does your tribe feel about this movie? Can you do this all day?
I originally was going to say no, and I did a half rewatch of it just to get myself up to speed on it. I remembered most of it, but it's been a while since I've seen it. I saw it once it first came out on streaming, and that was I want to say it was like at least a couple months ago.
Man,
and so I watched it. I watched it again, and I just forgot how good it was. And so I won't make this a long, drawn out, make you think I'm saying no when I'm saying yes or vice versa. I'll say that I can do this all day. I will say, though, I don't know if I'm going to rewatch it as often but it's got everything that I love in a movie, right? You got some great comedy. You have some moments where you really feel for the characters, and it's something that is believable to me. So I'm all about that. Official, you don't go too deep with everything, but I like the characters. I like Aquafina. I like Nicholas Holt's characters, Renfield, and of course Nick Cage as Dracula is over the top awesome. But the action, holy shit, the action is just freaking fantastic in this, and it's funny, right? So
Yeah.
when you have good action and it's funny, that's almost an automatic. I can do this all day for me, but I would have said no until I recently, rewatched it. So yeah,
I feel like
it's
this is a
just
movie you're going to be able to fall in love with every October.
you
And
could,
that's all you need. You watch it once a year and that's fine. It doesn't need to
yeah,
in I can do this all day movie doesn't need to be and I watch this once a month movie. It can just be
absolutely.
something that you touch back on and I think this will be in that rotation. And I feel like I need to bring Dracula Dead and Loving It back into that rotation too.
I think you do. I think you do. And I
That's
can't
a that's
remember.
a classic.
I can't remember what. Oh no, I do remember what Saturday Night Live skit it was. So I think John Travolta was hosting, right? And so he was Dracula or he was Renfield or something to that effect. And it's just this ongoing skit about Dracula and Renfield, and it's just funny. Just shenanigans ensue, and it's just one of my favorite childhood moments. And this makes me want to almost propose like we should just do a Saturday Night Live best of like Halloween horror type of episode. But I don't know. Maybe we could just have part of that as an ongoing discussion throughout
I don't know.
October.
I don't know if Dan Aykroyd did anything for Halloween. You should
Huh.
really check out a certain DVD in your collection to just review.
For what, if anyone's curious as to what he's referring to, I got a package in the mail that just happened to have the Nothing But Trouble DVD in it. And I almost automatically just threw it in the garbage because I was so disgusted. And my whole family heard me say, "What the fuck?" when I opened up the package. And so, as funny as it is, the movie's around here somewhere. But yeah, Nothing But Trouble. Not not gonna see it anytime soon. That's for sure. I've already watched it at least 1.5 times too many.
Oh man. Oh, I love it.
But
If
that's a wrap for this episode. We are in the month of October. This is going to be our little Halloween spooky season go around for things. So we would love to hear what some of your favorite scary movies are. And we will end up catching you next time. But I'm Dan, the part-time adventure. That's Mark, the resident Jedi.
like, subscribe, give us some suggestions, and like Dan said, throw your favorite horror movies out there. We're gonna come correct with some scary reviews, but we can be influenced. We definitely can. So give us those suggestions and anything like this that we may have missed out there on streaming that how did we let this movie slip past our thoughts for this long? We love hearing from you. Thank you for all your comments and for all of the engagement on all the socials, and keep it up.
See you next time, everyone.